What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 428 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. As always, I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
It's been some time. It's a warm New England day, and hopefully my allergies will leave me alone long enough to record a nice podcast. Because waiting patiently for me to stop talking is this week's guest. This week we are joined by someone who's kind of done it all, but we were introduced to this man through his work in comic books. Today we're talking with Mr. Jamal Igle. Jamal, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, I'm new to your work. This is Alex. Alex is kind of like our guest scout. Anyone who's listening to the show, I tend to give Alex. I try to give him as much credit as I can because it is not easy finding people to talk to. But Alex knows a lot more names and a lot more creators than I do, so he tends to put people in front of my face, and I go, "Okay, yes, this looks amazing." This is yet another one of those cases. Alex, how did you come across? Like, what's our kind of our intro to Jamal here?
It was super partially recent, only because I was at the shop, my local comic shop, and I only had like one issue in my pull file, and so I was looking through what was on the rack, on the walls, and I was trying to look for something that would catch my eye, so maybe I could contact one of the creators and we could talk to him at some point. And Wrong Earth caught my eye, and I flipped through it, and I was like, "This looks confusing, but also amazing." And they just happened to have the previous 3 issues, so I got 1 through 4 all in one shot in that day, and I read through them, and I was like, "This is rad." And I saw Jamal's name on it, and I was like, "We know him. Like we might not, like we've never met you at a convention. It's usually how we build some rapport." But looking through your past work, it's like we've read 52. We've read some Supergirl. Like your name's been through the industry, so I recognized it, and I was like, it would be pretty rad if we could talk to this guy. And here we are.
Well, I'm happy that you stumbled on the wrong Earth.
It's a go ahead, Alex.
I read through the 4 issues that are out of because the current series is Wrong Earth Night and Day.
Correct.
And trying to acquaint myself with it, I realized like I expected to be confused, and you catch a hang of it real quick, because there's the main characters are the Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, and I'm like, this is gonna hurt my head. But like the characters are they're, even though they're supposed to be the same, they're still so different. You're excited to see them, interact. And then I realized, like, this isn't their first series. This is essentially the 3rd series, and it's the 2nd one that you've worked on. So I was like, you have experience, because I had dumb interview questions like, is it tough keeping track? It's like, you've already done this for 6 issues before the series even came out. And that's one that you co-created, correct?
Yes. I was approached by Stuart Moore originally, who does Bronze Age Boogie and Captain Ginger. He's along with other like Marvel novels from Marvel and comics, and we first originally worked together on Firestorm over at DC, and got to know each other and had stayed close. And Stuart is friends with Tom Payer, who's my co-creator on The Wrong Earth and the editor-in-chief of Ahoy Comics. And they pitched it to me. I thought it was a great idea. Tom and I just worked on it, and we put the first miniseries together, and it's been one of the best creative relationships I've had.
I was trying to describe it to JR before I dropped off the issues, and I was like, it's as if you had Adam West and Michael Keaton kind of sparring a little bit. And
yeah.
And just seeing like the wacky versus the more violent, and how one gets surprised and the other one is disappointed.
But then, of course, we throw in with issue 4, we throw another monkey wrench into the works.
And that's what was that, Man Dragonfly?
Yes, Man Dragonfly. So, for lack of a better comparison, we have the Adam West Batman, we have the Michael Keaton, Christian Bale Batman, and now we have Batman Beyond.
Okay. That sounds fun.
So for people who are listening at home who haven't encountered Wrong Earth, Jamal, is there like a quick, like the elevator pitch for the story of Wrong Earth?
Yes, it's about 2 versions, or now 3 versions, of the same superhero, Dragonfly. One is a 60s daring crime fighter. The second, a grim and gritty Avenger. The third, a high-tech Daredevil. And they cross paths. In the first series, they end up swapping universes. Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man end up swapping universes and have to deal with each other's enemies. And in the current series, they team up. And the third series is it's more of a buddy comedy a la Midnight Run or the first Lethal Weapon movie.
Right.
And having to deal with between Earth Zeta and Earth Omega, I believe.
Yes, Earth's Alpha, Omega, and Zeta.
It has a lot of like the tropes that we've all seen in comics before with the different versions of the same hero, but this one kind of it's like equal parts satire but also an engaging comic. It's a lot of fun. Alex dropped off the first 4 issues for me to read through, and like I guess the thing that really got me was like the big thing on our show is we like to talk with interesting people who have talent, which kind of it's self-deprecation, but it's also we just really admire people who have really worked in the trade and honed their skills to be able to make something. And like, dude, at the risk of sounding just total fanboyish or what, like, man, like your art, you're killing it on this book.
Thank you.
I imagine it must be difficult to create the same character twice and then also be able to get these pages down, even though there's like both characters have like the green suits, but you still have to be able to like just differentiate between the two, and then also like make it so that it just doesn't turn into like a whole page of green mud, but I feel like that never happens. Was that a difficult part of making this book, or is that just your skills just are that refined?
Well, I mean, I would like to take credit and say it's skill. It's entirely skill, but there's a lot of juggling. There really is, and there's a lot of research that went into developing the project from the beginning. To be honest, like, when we did the first miniseries, especially because we're just dealing with 2 different versions of the same Earth, the entire idea of Earth Alpha was, I wanted to take it further than the obvious sort of, Batman, like Green Hornet sort of analog idea. So I started filling Earth Alpha with all this concept. I looked up all this concept art and technology and cars and computers and things that had never actually been produced, especially from between the 50s and the 70s. And I tried to put as much of that into the Earth Alpha sequences, but also leaning very, very much on, actors of the day and, and really just sort of pushing that element, but making it fit in with the overall story.
Right.
And a lot of it, a lot of keeping things fresh for me in my own head, especially, is that I play a lot with body language with all the characters. And I try to get them to move differently and stand differently. And, and the thing about Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man especially is that as different as they are personality-wise, there's a lot of bleed over between the two of them. They have more in common than they like to admit in terms of approach, even though I personally think that the thing that separates Dragonfly Man from Dragonfly is that Dragonfly Man is just such a smug prick. But he doesn't mean to be.
Yeah.
He's this genius inventor. He's rich, he's athletic, and then he looks at his darker mirror who's in better shape than he is, has cooler gadgets, but at the same time is just tired and angry all the time, and just sort of disappointed with how the way things have worked out. But there's especially with the second miniseries, they've had a year between the two miniseries to sort of fit in on each other's respective Earths, and Dragonfly has made a much better go of it than Dragonfly Man has, because Dragonfly Man has to deal with Jordan, the Omega version, the Earth Omega version of Stinger, who is one part Jason Todd and one part the Punisher. Like he doesn't even stop to ask questions. He just shoots.
I definitely get a vibe of it's just like disappointed dad. It's like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He wants him to be better, and he knows there's a good kid somewhere in there who would just put down the Sig Sauer and let somebody walk away for once without blowing them away.
When I flipped through one of the pages that really solidified my choice to buy everything in this series now was when the two of them were talking to original universe Stinger, and how he was saying how depressed he got, and then they put him in the car and sent him away, and just their expressions of like regret. And Stinger's such a great like Jimmy Olsen kind of go get him, guys, and
he's so gung ho and earnest and sweet.
And their expressions, dealing with Stinger at that point, and then how they get mad at each other after that. And as you were saying, it's not just about the costumes or drawing cool fights or whatever. It's the expressions on their faces were telling a lot too.
Yeah, it's something that I picked up looking at artists like Kevin McGuire and Jerry Ordway, and just really gravitated, Dave Stevens, Al Williamson. I just really gravitated to that level of visual storytelling as an artist, as a reader especially, and then wanting to bring that in myself as an artist.
For a brief sidetrack, I was at a convention and Kevin McGuire had his table set up and was taking sketch commissions, and all he was offering was headshots, and there was 2 lines. You write down the name of the character and then the expression, and that's all he was doing. And just that alone to me was like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen.
But that's who he is. I mean, I personally think he is, as far as like facial expressions in comics, like there's nobody better than Kevin McGuire.
Yeah.
Like nobody touches him, really, honestly. And there's a lot of very talented people working in the industry. So for me to say that, that's a big deal.
Speaking of, in terms of your history, we just jumped right in and started to talk about Wrong Earth, and I'm sure we're gonna come back to Wrong Earth in a little bit. I did want to talk about you and essentially your accolades. How you got into the business. You've been around at least, and we learned in our last episode. We talked with Ben Templesmith for a while. I learned a hard truth in the fact that Wikipedia is not always correct. Because I came out with a fact, and Ben Templesmith was straight up like, "Oh, I know where you're reading that from," and it's not true. It's not true at all. But according to Wikipedia and from what I've been able to cross-reference on the internet, you've been in the business for quite some time now. You've worked for pretty much every publisher that I could think of on a variety of books, which again, we're probably going to touch on that in a little bit. But
Right.
how did you? What was your introduction to this business? How did you get eventually to the point where you're working on Wrong Earth?
Well, that's a good question, actually. Well, my introduction to the business side, anyway, when I was in high school, because I live in New York, and I was going to the High School of Art and Design, and very much with an eye to doing comics, I found out that Marvel had a tour at the time at their old offices on 387 Park Avenue. And we cut school a couple of times to go on the Marvel tour. So that was
time.
I think so. So that was sort of the first time that I'd been in an office, like in a comic book company, and seen that it was an actual office, that there were people actually like in-house working on these books.
Right.
And that made me really, really want to get even, like, I wanted to do comics, but that really made me want to learn more about the business side of comics. And I ended up, there's a program in New York called City of School Executive Internship Program. And when I was in my senior year of high school, I got a 6-month internship at DC Comics. So I was splitting my time. I would go into DC 4 days a week, and I would have to go to my school on Fridays. And the 6 months of helping out in editorial and helping out in production, just absorbing, learning techniques, learning how to do a little bit of lettering, learning how to ink, learning how to do paste up and mechanicals, learning how to shoot photostats, sitting in on editorial meetings, just hanging out and absorbing. So that was really that was the big thing. That was really that was like my first real education as far as like being in comics. And I just knew that it was something that I wanted to do full time. My first actual gig came a few years later. I had moved to Canada for a bit and moved back to New York, and I was working at Jim Hanley's Universe, and I was bouncing at a bar on the weekends. But I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pitch. I'm gonna try and get some comics work. So I put together a portfolio, and I went to a convention, and I that's where I met the late Dwayne McDuffie originally. And I got a couple of small offers to do things, but then I got offered an opportunity to work on a series by this company called Majestic Entertainment, which you've probably never heard of. But this was 1993. It was one of these companies back then that was doing these collectible card comics. At least that was the idea. So I was working on a book called Flashpoint, which was about a teenage superhero with microwave powers from Staten Island. And it was part of the shared universe with a couple of other books, one by Phil Hester that was called Stat. And I forget what Stat stood for, but they were like, special agents and with superpowers. And there was another book called Legacy. And the whole universe revolved around this superhero who was dying, and he decided that he was going to divest his powers to the world through a lottery. So the winners of this lottery ended up getting these superpowers. Some of them got mutated. Some of them became powerful. Legacy was his original protege, but was basically a screw up. So that's what led to this whole other universe. And they were making a go of it for a bit. And then the parent company that owned them embezzled all the money, filed Chapter 11, screwed everybody over.
Well,
Wow.
that'll do it.
So if you go and Google on the good old Google, you can look up you can find some information about Majestic Entertainment. Not a lot, but there is some information out there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there was real like name talent working on the books. You know, Paul Jenkins was the editor-in-chief for the last like couple of months. But yeah, they had people who had been, you know, working at like Dark Horse, DC as editors. And, you know, like I said, they had like Phil Hester and Dan Lawless, and you know, yeah. So you know, there was stuff happening, but you know. So what ended up happening was I took the pages that I had photocopies of, and I sent them out to every editor that I could think of. And Kevin Dooley, who was the editor on Green Lantern at the time, offered me 8 pages in Green Lantern. So I'd been working on, you know, actual comics for, you know, 6 months, but my first actual printed comics work was in an issue of Green Lantern.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I couldn't tell. I was like, did we drop out there? Or anyways, so I mean, that's me being partial, obviously, to Green Lantern. That just do you remember what? And this might be going back way too far. Do you remember what your first issue of Green Lantern was?
Yeah, it was Green Lantern 52, number 52. It was right after Kyle became Green Lantern.
Ooh.
That's like, God, that's like right after. Like,
Yeah.
It wasn't 51.
No, it was 50 was 50 was the issue where Hal became Parallax, and Kyle got the ring from Gantet.
48, 49 is when they destroy Coast City.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I was trying to think, like, God, do I have that issue?
Jerry's a big Kyle fan.
Yeah, there was a time in my life where like the first appearance of Kyle Rayner was the first key issue that I like hunted down, you know, like even though it's kind of everywhere because it was the 90s, but that was one of the first times where I was like, oh, I really like this character. I want the first time he ever appeared. But yeah, that's right. That was like right when that was all hitting. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, you even starting on Green Lantern, which again, I'm a huge fan of. You've worked on even just, again, this is Wikipedia. I'm trying to be as accurate as I can be here. Everything from Action Comics, Green Lantern, obviously Martian Manhunter, a lot of Supergirl.
Yeah.
Which, according to the internet, I can't remember where exactly I saw it, but the volumes of Supergirl that you worked on actually heavily influenced the television show. Is that?
Yeah, which surprised the hell out of me. No, I mean, it was a nice surprise. Actually, it's really funny because Sterling Gates and I get name checked in the pilot episode, and I had a buddy of mine who was working at CBS at the time who sent me a link to the pilot online before it debuted. And there's the scene in the pilot where she's like trying on the different versions of the costume, and there's announced like the what was it, the CB radio goes, you know, fire at the corner of Gates and Igle, and I'm just like, what? So apparently, and you know, this was confirmed by me later, like talking to people who worked on the show, that they basically like cut up our issues and made it part of the original show Bible. So,
wow,
that's,
I mean,
rad. It's fun when you can pick those out because a few of those shows do that. I recall Arrow having a Judge Grell at one point.
Yeah. And then I think it's fun when they're able to do stuff like that. I know Trevor Von Eaton and Tony Isabella appeared as judges on an episode of Black Lightning. So,
Just those little things, you know.
yeah.
They kind of pay homage to the creators, and it's, you know, like even though maybe not everyone would get the references, but like, you know, people who make it when like your reaction, you know, it's just really neat to see that kind of thing.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, man, I mean, seeing what you've worked on just over the years, pretty much every publisher, whether it's Marvel, DC, Image, you know, now with Ahoy Comics.
Right.
What's it like been working with? Because you mentioned Tom Payer, who wrote Wrong Earth, the book that you illustrated. He is the editor-in-chief over at Ahoy.
Right.
What's it like? You know, because you've worked for them all. So how's life been? You know, working with at I have completely forgotten how to talk, but working with Ahoy Comics and Tom and the crew.
No, it's been great. I mean, the thing about working with Ahoy is that you know you're working with people who know what they're doing. You know, the entire staff is just people that I've either worked with previously or people that I know and that I trust. And, you know, it's been the only person that I really didn't know was a publisher, Hart Seeley. And Hart's just a great guy. So it's nice. It's a nice atmosphere. They treat everybody well. They pay on time, which is always a plus. But you know, that's the big thing is just it's like I said earlier, it's really been one of the best creative, you know, partnerships that I've had in a very long career in the industry. It's nice to be with like-minded individuals, you know, people with, you know, a similar sense of humor and skill set and recall and just everything. You know, it's really nice.
Even given Tom Payer's ongoing Twitter feud with John Layman.
Well, that aside, I mean, I'm on Layman's side, unfortunately, but you know, I owe him money, so I have to be on his side.
That's been one of the longest running, and you know, admittedly, Layman's calmed down with it because I've followed him for years. I'm a big fan of Chew. Anyone who listens to the show knows that Chew is one of my favorite comic books. And I've been following Layman on Twitter for some time now, and I remember there was a time where every single day he was tweeting something making fun of Tom Payer.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, who is Tom Payer? What is happening? Why does he hate this man so much?
Here's the one thing about John Layman is the man knows how to commit to a bit.
He absolutely does. Oh man. Okay, so
I wasn't sure if you have something.
Yeah, I was Alex, if you have something, take it away.
So one of the things we hear when creators switch to either a smaller publisher, I guess an indie publisher, whatever's not the big two, is that there's a sense of freedom. And like, have you felt that really with getting to, you know, co-create your own book and working with, you know, so many good people and having to not worry about like, did I draw Batman's ears too long, or, you know, what's going to get called back or edited kind of stuff?
It's different. You know, I've been like most of my output over the last, I would say, decade has really been creator-owned work. So there's definitely that sense of freedom, but I still go back and play with the big boys' toys at the same time. It's different. I think the big thing for me, because I'm so busy with my own work, it's given me the ability to say no.
Right.
So I can pick and choose the things that I really want to do, just because I want to do them. There's not a financial consideration attached to it, as opposed to when you're really just counting on work from, you know, larger companies. to support your lifestyle. I had to give up my very costly Hot Toys habit. Once I started getting past $200, it's just like, nope, can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yep. But they're so realistic.
I know. I saw that the new Captain America figure that they're coming out with was just like, it's $400. I cannot, for the life of me, justify that. Well, not for a 12-inch action figure. I don't care how cool it looks.
I mean, you can't get an Iron Man Hot Toys and then not get the suit gantry. You could just go with it. It's just.
No, okay. You want to know what killed me? What really killed me, and I had to talk myself off the ledge, is the San Diego. Like years ago, when the DC finally got like the Batman 66 license, and Hot Toys had Batman, Robin, and a 1/6 scale Batmobile.
Yep.
Oh.
And I'm just looking at this thing going, I do not have the space. I cannot. This is $1,000. I cannot. I can't justify this to my wife. There's no way she'd let me do this. So.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think Joe Quinones got that set. I remember he was posting about it. If it's the same one, I'm thinking it may have been the same one.
It probably was.
Things are gorgeous.
Oh yeah, but there's like this kind of mutual appreciation society as far as that stuff goes between like me, Joe, Will Torres, Mitch Gerrits, like Doc Shane.
Right. Oh man, those there's a toy collector that I casually follow online, and like he's gone from like, oh, I collect the Marvel Legends action figures, and I also collect the Star Wars 3 3/4, little, and now it's just like, okay, I sold everything, I only collect Hot Toys now.
Right. You know what? You gotta make a choice, man. You gotta, I just, I enjoy being married, so I have to...
Compromise,
Exactly.
I only have two, and they're pretty much the two that no one else really wants, because it's Agent Coulson and the Mandarin from Iron Man 3.
The most money I've spent on a Hot Toys figure was the original Avengers Hulk figure.
Oh, yeah.
And that was $500.
Wow.
And I still have it to this day, but that was the crazy. But it's like 15 inches tall. I mean,
right.
It's the Incredible Hulk figure that I always imagined, but never thought it was possible.
Yep.
So my new obsession now is buying old LPs.
Yep. Which is just another. I dabble very, like, I am the most casual in the terms of vinyl collecting.
Right.
But I there's one album that I'd really like. I'd like an original pressing of the Gorillaz Demon Days, and I was like, oh, that's probably not that hard to find. Oh, it turns out it's like one of the rarest. They only printed like 500 of them, and it was in England,
Oh yeah, no, it's nuts. I'm not that crazy. Like, I'm super frugal when it comes to that. We were in Hyannis, and there's a record shop there that we stumbled on, and I got a copy of The Wall and the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack for like the two of them for like $30. Like, I was thrilled,
The little things, man,
Absolutely.
Everyone says that there's no difference, but they totally sound better.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I kind of stumbled backwards into it because one of my former downstairs neighbors was moving, and she decided not to take her record player with her. And I hadn't owned a record player since the 80s.
Right.
I didn't think they still made record players, but now I have this record player and this, slowly growing record collection.
Yeah. It's great because action figures are cool, and like you can look at them, but at the very least, records you can listen to them.
Oh yeah,
like you can justify. It makes it a little easier to justify spending a lot of money on it.
This is true. This is very, very true.
All right. As far as I want to kind of get back to talking about comics, one thing that I'm interested in, especially being uh, uh, in the business, for so long, having worked on so many different books, I'm interested in your take on where the business currently is. How do you think the current state of comics, have things changed for the better? Have things changed for the worse? Like, what's your thoughts on where comics are today?
I think things have improved. I think a lot of that improvement is that there are more diverse creators involved, which is always a good thing. It's always a really good thing.
Absolutely.
I think there's room for improvement, obviously. I mean, it's not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but I feel like the industry as a whole is slowly growing and changing, but society as a whole is slowly growing and changing at the same time. I feel like we're at this inflection point just our in our daily conversation about who and what we want to be as a people, and I think that's reflected in our media. Mm. So I think that you have more women working in comics. I love the fact that there are more women getting the opportunity to do like mainstream superhero comics, for example, as opposed to being relegated to like kiddie books or Barbie or what have you. I like that there are more LGBTQ creators involved in the industry and bringing in different voices, different stories, more Latino creators, more Black creators, more Asian creators, telling their stories or telling stories from their perspective. And again, there's always room for improvement, but I think things have gotten better.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, especially like, you had the opportunity to work on a book like Black.
Mm-hmm.
Please let me know if I'm not correct here. Back when you first got into the business, do you think a book like Black would have been able to have been made, or do you credit that to how times have changed and how there's more inclusivity in comics these days?
Well, I think that's that's kind of hard to say, because when around the time that I got into the industry as an artist, I mean, Milestone was around.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you did have that, that template for, and then there were other Black superhero books, like independent Black superhero books being done, but Milestone was like the first, I think, just like slowly, like the first imprint that focused on marginalized characters and marginalized creators for the most part. I think Black, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, is evergreen as a story, because we're still dealing with racial disparity and police violence and not to get too political, but we have this constant drumbeat from people who say they're conservative but are slowly getting driving off the deep end and falling into this sort of authoritarian mode that we haven't seen in this country in a very long time. So Black, fortunately we're able to do it. Unfortunately, it has to exist,
right?
Because we're still having trouble, in certain corners, not every corner, but in certain corners, people don't like that we're doing these stories. Yeah. Because they want to pretend that we live in a post-racial society when it really isn't.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the it's even hard to it's like we on this show we tend to try to just focus on the nice things, and we talk about comics and it's fun, but I feel like a book like Black is important. I haven't read it myself, but in researching and in learning about you and your work, and learning about Black and I or saw an interview on YouTube where you were talking about it. I felt like that was an important title. And like you said, it's great that it exists, but it's also sad that it has to exist. And
Yeah.
it's but like you said, the things have been changing for the better. Always room for improvement, but like you said, there's much more inclusivity. There's a lot more female representation. There's a lot more minority representation, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your
Let's go ahead.
with your work history and the times you've worked in marketing and been a writer and also been an editor, were these jobs times where you wanted to test them out and see if they were a good fit, or were they more necessary to your career?
No, I just sort of stumbled into them. More often than not. There was a need at the time, and I just sort of fell into it. I mean, I had the experience, and especially with Action Lab being the vice president of marketing at Action Lab, I had marketing experience prior. They needed somebody to spearhead that effort, so I volunteered. It just worked out. Yeah, it was a good 3 years. It was a hard 3 years, but it was a good 3 years.
Right.
Having known so many parts of the business, does that make like what you do now easier, because you can kind of predict how to make something better in the future by working on it now, or is it still kind of up in the air and it's in other people's hands?
Well, I'm a big believer in letting professionals do their jobs. So there's still a certain amount of releasing things into the air if I'm not doing all the parts of that job myself, and letting it go with God, for lack of a better term. I think personally that everything that I have had the opportunity to do has made me a much more well-rounded creator than I probably would have been if I had just had the experience of just being a penciler or just being an inker or however. And it's also made me more appreciative of my creative partners. It's also made me much more appreciative of the editors that I've worked with over the years. Because I know their job, and I know what they have to do and what they have to manage on a daily basis, as well as my own. So I try to make part of my job is making their job as easy as possible.
Having held so many worn so many hats and done so many things in the industry, whether it's penciling, inking, coloring, writing, is there a title that has eluded you in your career that you would love to work on?
Eluded is probably not the right term. I mean, I have ideas for stories that I would love to do. But I'm sort of also in this really good space where if I really wanted to do something of a type, that I could just create my own version of it and just kind of do it. I have that ability, but I've also been very lucky where, like I said, I get to play with the toys. I did a 7-page story for DC a couple of months ago for Infinite Frontier Zero. And that was like my first DC work in I think probably about 6 or 7 years. And not from them not asking me, or at least DC proper. No, that's not necessarily true, because I also did a 2-page story for Dark Knight's Death Metal.
Right.
And then I also did 3 pages for Teen Titans Go to Camp. So the past, I would say I'd like this probably like the past 6 or 8 months of between doing my own work and then doing covers and then jumping over and doing stuff for DC. I did a Kwanzaa card for them. I did a Snickers ad for them, a 2-page Snickers ad for them. But at the same time working for Ahoy and then doing covers for various other comics, doing some writing projects for some anthologies. There really isn't anything that's kind of eluded me yet. I mean, there's
it's like the beauty of having so much experience in all facets of the business is like you don't even need to wait for the dream project to come to you, because if you think of it, you can just make it. You can
absolutely.
You can crowdfund it. You can publish it on. We talked with Ben Templesmith last week. He's doing an Instagram webcomic.
Wow.
There's so many different ways to get your idea out there.
Yeah.
I did. I guess I learned something in my own question.
Would you be interested in doing so last year's C2E2 had a joint event with AEW, and some of the artists had done posters for the different wrestlers. So we talked to Daniel Warren Johnson. Who did he do, JR?
He did MJF.
Yeah. And so would you be interested in doing we've seen you're an AEW fan.
Yeah, no, I think if the opportunity came up, I would love to do either Best Friends and Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander. I think that'd be cool. I think I could probably. I know somebody already did Jurassic Express.
Right.
The Acclaimed might be fun to draw. Yeah, although I can't stand Max Caster. He's such a douche.
Max Caster is a bastard. Makes fun of all my favorites in his raps. I don't think we have enough time to dive into AW, because I could just
we could. I've been watching that show since they launched. Since before ever since they started doing the countdown before they even launched Being the Elite.
Yep. Yeah, that's why we don't want to keep it, because that Dynamite starts in 20 minutes.
Okay.
I know you mentioned you had some nice dinner cooking, so we don't want to keep it for too much longer.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to know that. Because I was a big wrestling fan when I was a kid, fell out for the longest time, just didn't really interest me anymore. And then AEW started up, and I was like, "What is this?" And now every week I sit in front of my TV watching these people, and now I'm buying half of my wardrobe as wrestling T-shirt. I'm wearing a Kenny Omega T-shirt literally right now.
I only own one. It's not a Kenny Omega T-shirt. I had the original AEW wrestling shirt, the one. Yep. So that is the only wrestling shirt that I own. And because the thing is I was not to diverge too much into wrestling talk, but I had the network, the WWE network, and I was watching the WWE religiously, and I was trying to get into MLW, but it's just there's something about the MLW product that just doesn't really appeal to me. And then ROH is not in my market, so I never really got to see ROH, but you hear about the Bucks, you hear about Kenny, you hear about SCU, you hear about Jay Lethal. I'm like, who? I remember Jay Lethal from Impact,
right?
But so what happened was when Ring of Honor and New Japan did their Super Show at Madison Square Garden, I took my daughter to see it.
Damn.
And that really got me. I originally got tickets because I thought that Kenny was going to be there and the Bucks were going to be. And then they pull out, and you're just like, and this was before the AEW announcement, obviously.
Right.
And then, so all this, I still had a great time at the show. Like the only bad part of that show was the Enzo and Big Cass running. Like, Nobody wanted to see that. I'm happy for Cass. Excuse me, W. Morrissey.
Right. Yes.
On Impact. I'm happy he seems to have gotten it together, and he's actually like, he's performing and he's looking good, and he's looking strong and healthy and everything. Enzo's a lost cause, but but yeah. So I'm an AEW. I'm a mark. What can I say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get it, man. 100% like WWE. If you're into WWE, awesome. I watch. Who doesn't tune into WrestleMania? But like, it's just not for me. I like AEW.
Yeah.
But
I like the indie vibe. I like that you get a little bit. You're getting a little DDT Pro. You're getting a little Ring of Honor. You're even getting a little of the old school WWE, WCW kind of stuff going on all in one. You get in a Chikara show. It's all in one thing. It's like it's great.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Alex, you made a mistake here.
I did.
All right. So with all that said, as we wind down here, running out of time, unfortunately. Jamal, one thing we like to do, we like to give people a moment or two to plug their stuff. So if people wanted to find more of you, more of your work, is there any place they could go online? I'm not sure if you have any appearances. It's we're kind of in that middle in between moment on vaccines and places opening and things like that. So I'm not sure if there's any appearances coming up, but if people wanted to go and look for your work, support you, where could they do so?
Well, you can go to my website, which is jamaligle.com. And at the bottom of the page, you can see all of my socials. You can follow me on Twitter mostly. I'm on Twitter a lot. And you can follow me at Jamal Igle, and same thing on Facebook. Look for Jamal Igle on Facebook, and I'm happy to talk to you.
Excellent. Jamal, excuse me. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I know it was a little last minute, so we really appreciate you popping on, chatting with us for a bit about Wrong Earth, about all of your work through all the years. It's been a true pleasure. This has been great, and it's also nice to meet a fellow AEW mark.
My
pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me.
This has been absolutely great. So
I do want to add, if you're interested in the comics we were talking about, you can go to comicsahoy.com. One of the things I dig was that when you bring up something that you're interested in, like I'm looking at Wrong Earth Volume 1, there's options to buy it on Comixology. There's an options button for Amazon, one for Barnes & Noble, one for IndieBound, and there's also a button to look for your local shop. And there's 2 more issues, one in June, one in July. If you tell your local shop, they're going to order more than just one, which is good for the company. So let your local shop know, you want to try some more, some Wrong Earth, and they'll order a few copies, and you could support the company and, and help out.
Absolutely. Support your local comic shop, support indie creators, support, the smaller publishers. Ahoy Comics, especially with Wrong Earth, seems to be doing something right. This is a very fun book. If anything, this episode, your work today, Jamal, and talking with us has at least gotten one new customer. So,
all right.
So at least there's that. But again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute blast.
Again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So with all that said, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks everyone so much for listening. Until next time, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamal.
And this has been episode 428 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you like that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.